Welcome to Backpass with Ras, and I hope you're all well wherever you are listening and watching this show. On this episode this week, we've got someone who is known for his reliability, his professionalism, because he's lasted a very long time in his career as a footballer, a player that is rock steady. He's known for his long range free kicks as well, and he's one of the pioneers in terms of the naturalized Singapore players in the national team. It's none other than Mr. Daniel Bennett. How are you doing, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Russ. It's good to be here.
Thanks for agreeing to be on the show as well. And it's a pleasure having you on the show. So let's get started. So Daniel, I've just found this out quite recently actually. Maybe I wasn't too well versed earlier on, but you came to Singapore very young as a toddler. How old were you when you came to Singapore? Which year was that?
I came in 1980, so I was just 2 years old. My parents came to work here. My father was a teacher, so I was brought up here. I was at an international school. My father worked at United World College, and so my education was in an international school, but it didn't take me long to realize that the good football was with the local boys, and so I soon integrated into that.
Okay, so these are the local boys in the heartlands?
No, it was when I was about 13, 14, I joined Milo Soccer School.
Yeah.
It was, I was at the Gloucester Barracks with Coach Robert Lim, yes.
Yeah. Robert Lim mentioned this to us in his previous episode, one of our previous episodes actually. One of the most recent episodes, in fact, he mentioned about, talent scouting you and then getting you into the Milo scheme, and then they say that you could not play because you're not Singaporean, something like that, something along those lines.
So, I used to play in a league at Gloucester Barracks, and it soon became evident there was local football going on there. My father spoke to Robert Lim, and I was training with the Milo boys. It was the 1976 boys. So I was playing a couple of years up, but I was not allowed to play. So they helped me move to Tiong Bahru at that time under Tahari Paijan, and so I played in the under 14, under 15 team at Tiong Bahru at that time. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to your childhood now, where were you living when you were in Singapore? Where do you spend your childhood in Singapore?
I've always lived in sort of the west because the school was in Dover Road. So I lived in Pasir Panjang. I lived along Holland Road. I lived all in that vicinity. That's why I ended up at Queenstown Stadium, really, because that was near where I had some people looking for me to play in other parts of Singapore, but at that time you're young, you want to stay close to home.
Okay. And what was it like as an expat family in the 1980s and 1990s in Singapore?
I suppose it's hard to say. I mean, I grew up here, so it was what I knew. I went to school. I had my social network within the school and my friends. So there was less sort of interaction with sort of people from outside. I mean, I'm sure that's generally the case when you're at school. You socialize with those kids in your school. So my life was that sort of international bringing up and that society. Yeah.
Mm. And assimilation into the local culture, so to speak. So your local food, picking up local languages. This is all through football.
I learned Malay at school when I was sort of 15 for a couple of years. But to be honest, when I first came back to play professionally, I thought this is my chance to really go strong with the Malay. But as soon as I opened my mouth, it was just laughter all around the dressing room. So that put an end to it, which I was a little bit disappointed with, because I think my Malay would have been perfect by now. So yeah, when I was young, I did learn a little bit of Malay.
Okay.
Of course, we eat the local food. So integration in that kind of way. Of course, I'm living in Singapore. You live a different life maybe to many locals, but you're still living in Singapore, and
Yeah.
that's the same today. People from Singapore are from all different backgrounds.
Okay. And at home, was there a heavy emphasis on academics?
Ah, you're going this way. Okay. My father was a teacher. I mean, there was expectation that I would probably maybe go to university or I'd be so. There's peer pressure as well. I mean, you want to do well at school, so there was always that part. But I remember sitting in class and looking out the window at the football field much of my time. So it had to be a balance. And if you're going to ask me that, then 100%. You have to learn to balance your football or your hobbies with your studies. And to be honest, you should never pack up your football or the hobbies because of the study. Because if you can't balance it, then it shows a lot about your character, really.
Yeah, fair point. And on that note as well, how were you as a student in school?
I mean, yeah, I did okay. I did the IB. I completed the IB. I went to university. I did fine in school. I mean, what I did, I was happy with what I achieved in school. I was happy with. I did sort of averagely in my year group. I was not the top. I mean,
Okay.
I did have other interests. I was not the top, but I worked hard, and I think you can see my work ethic in the football. It was similar in my studies as well.
Yeah. So you did okay then in school?
I did well. Yeah, I think I did okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's good. And what introduced, or rather, who introduced you to football, or where do you get the inspiration to play the game?
My father, from very young,
Okay.
he was coaching us, taking us, but now they have private academies where you pay a lot of money. In the past, and I know ANZA still exist.
Yeah.
And they have volunteer coaches. It's not a profit-making machine there. So it was ANZA. I played at ANZA, and we had a league, and we had volunteers. My father was a volunteer. He coached the team, and he took the team for the match day. So he was heavily influential in my starting pathway to playing football. Yeah. So and my brother, of course. I have a brother 18 months older, so being the younger one, you're always trying to sort of push yourself to be that level. So I think that helped as well.
All right. Any other siblings?
No, just me and my brother.
Okay, cool. Um, on the side of football, then I know you're a big Everton fan. How did that come about?
My family are from Liverpool, so
All right.
my grandfather, my great grandfather, had a butcher's shop down the road from Goodison Park.
Okay.
Woodford's Butchers. So yeah, I mean we come from the area.
So that's your local team then.
Yeah, I don't have the accent, but I'm from Liverpool, and being closer to Goodison, it was always Everton. Yes, so Everton runs in the family. It's in our blood. Yes.
All right. And in those days when you were in Singapore, so how do you catch up with Everton's results? Watching matches, how was it? What's that
It was hard. I
like?
mean, we used to get Alfred Dunhill of London coming on for the FA Cup finals, and that was like a highlight. We stayed awake just to watch that. But we used to get videos sent back from England from my grandfather, and I'd play it 1,000 times just watching that game over and over because we didn't have broadcasts here at that time.
Yeah.
So it was hard. And of course, if I went back in the summer to England, there are no games on, so it was hard to catch live games as well. So yeah, it was that, but it inspired, and you have your posters on the wall. You have you know about the players, you read about the players. I was sent magazines, these match magazines to read, and then your inspiration grows from there. Yes.
Do you remember watching or rather following the broadcast through BBC World? I believe we had the radio broadcast, BBC World. They would.
Yes. Yes. The games were. My father would listen to those. Yeah, but it would only be one game, so depending on the game it was, right.
Correct. And also, I believe in the 90s, I'm not sure about the 80s, but I remember in the 90s, there used to be highlights of the English League. It was called the English First Division first before the Premier League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were highlights. I don't remember the highlights, but I'm sure I'd have watched that if it was on.
All right. And of course, it's very famous in Singapore about the whole Malaysia Cup days and all. Do you manage to catch any of those matches?
Yeah. So when I was sort of 15, 16, 19, it was a 94. And a lot of my classmates, they were traveling all the way up to Kedah and things to watch games. It was mad, yeah. And so I went to the stadium many times in Singapore. I never traveled to Malaysia, but I was at the stadium. I was at the stadium when Sundram scored his bicycle kick.
Okay.
I also sat with the Kedah fans for one game because my friend Khairi Jamaluddin, who's obviously now very well known in Malaysia, he was at school. Yeah. He took us into the Malaysian fans, and I sat there supporting Kedah for one game because you don't want to support anybody else if you're sitting with Kedah fans. So yeah, I used to go to the stadium. I remember the first time I went to the stadium was a game in the early 80s. Singapore played China, and I think Singapore won. It was either a draw or Singapore actually won. That was the first game and the first memory I have of going to the old Kallang Stadium to watch a game. Yeah.
So all these guys, the legends from the 80s and 90s, you're familiar with them then?
Well, I wouldn't say the 80s so much. I mean, I was very young. So that 90s team, obviously, 90s, that was when I was sort of 15, 16. And then when I started playing with Tiong Bahru and Sivaji took me into the Premier League team. Yeah. I remember it was the year 95 when Malaysia Singapore were not in the Malaysian league anymore, and so they played 1 year in the Singapore. It was the Premier League at that time as well, but it was not professional. So I remember walking out the National Stadium, and Fandi was there next to me, and I was, you can't believe you're walking alongside these guys. So that was a special moment, yeah. But they won the league easy that year, and it wasn't really entertaining.
They won it on the canter then.
Yeah, I mean, it was like training games for them. They had all the best team. They just won the Malaysian Cup, and it was kind of a transition year where the S League hadn't started, and the players were waiting for something to happen, I suppose.
Yeah. Any all-time favorite player that you have?
In Singapore?
No, generally, all over the world, worldwide.
I always say Gary Lineker because it was that '86 World Cup when he was really doing well. He was scoring lots of goals, and it was Lineker at that time. I remember traveling. We were in Europe and we were watching the games with my family, and he was a goal scorer. We all like goal scorers, so it was Lineker. But then there was Gascoigne, but it was a different era, But and then. In different generations, it was different players. But initially, when I was sort of 8, 9 years old, I enjoyed watching Lineker.
Okay. Is the 1986 World Cup your favorite World Cup?
I suppose that's the one I first remember. So you could say it's my favorite in that respect. But I mean, I remember watching when I was at university in 2002, and was it 98? And I remember Ronaldo bursting on the scene. The guy was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so that one would always be in my memory as well, just because of him. And then the way he collapsed and just before the final. And, it was memorable, that as well, for this reason. Because he was, for me, the things he did were just...
incredible.
Yeah, incredible, yeah.
Yeah, it's just very, very different. It's nothing that we've seen since he's gone.
That's right. Yes, just the power and his technique at the same time.
Yes. Agility, the technique, the speed. He had everything. Yeah. So going to your professional career now in the S League, starting off at Tiong Bahru, I think you have mentioned in some parts already about how you've made your entry into Tiong Bahru. You were also part of the team that played in the first ever S-League season. That right?
No, I was not part of the team in the first S-League season because I was still a foreigner.
Okay.
I was still at school, and so when the league started, they were obviously looking for more established players who could commit more. And so in '96, to be honest, no, I was at university. '96, I was at university.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the league had started before I left to university, but I didn't play the first year with Tanjong Pagar, which is
Okay.
at that point. So I played in the NFL. I played for
All right.
Bukit Merah, which was linked to Tanjong Pagar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not even in the Prime League team, huh?
I don't know if they had a Prime League team at that time. Honestly,
Okay. But so it was from the NFL. So what's the progression like? You had, I think, 3 spells at Tanjong Pagar. Tiong Bahru, Tanjong Pagar is one.
I was at Tiong Bahru in the Premier League, and then obviously I went to university, and then I came back to Balestier because Sivaji, who was at Tiong Bahru when I'd initially started,
Okay.
he'd moved to Balestier, so he contacted me, and so I was very happy after university. To be honest, I didn't know what I was going to do. It's that time when you suddenly finish and you think, okay, what's next? And when I had that call and the opportunity to come back and live in Singapore, I jumped at it. So it was a 6-month contract to start. I started mid-season with Balestier in June '99, and the contract was only 6 months until the end of the year. So I enjoyed that time. That was a really special time. Obviously, it was my first club in the S League professionally. I remember arriving with not a penny in my pocket, and so just to start earning some money and being able to live and sort of be a bit more independent. That was a special time, really. Yeah.
So walk us through chronologically now. So from Balestier, your next club was?
So I went to Tanjong Pagar at the end of that season. Obviously, I had the connection still. My heart was always with Tanjong Pagar because I was there from young. So I knew Tohari Paijan from my time as an under-15 player, and he called me to come back. There was already talk then of naturalization for some players.
Okay.
And so I moved.
This was in the late 90s?
No, it was early 2000.
Early
so it was 2000, I think.
Okay.
So 99, I joined Balestier. 2000, I moved to Tanjong Pagar. So initially, I was not able to play for Tanjong Pagar because I hadn't received the PR at the time.
Okay.
The PR, I think, to start with. And so at that time, PRs were allowed to play in the S League as a local.
Okay.
So I was waiting for the PR before I could begin.
Right.
So they signed 4 other foreigners, including Nikodim Busha, Jamad Ashuri. It was a good team. So I waited 6 months. I trained with them, and then I started in mid 2000.
And how's it like working with Tohari?
It was I really enjoyed it because I knew him from when I was young, so it wasn't difficult fitting in there. The boys were easy to get to know. The foreigners were very good players that we brought over. I really enjoyed that time. Haji managed the players well. Obviously, there were some good national players in the team. Lim Tong Hai, Stephen Tan. Then there was Rudy Chiron, Basri Hallis. So it was Samawir Basri.
Samawir
I mentioned him. Yeah, he was top at that time. So it was a good team to join, and I learned a lot when I moved there. I suppose maybe I shouldn't have jumped ship so soon. I look back and I think I jumped from Balestier after they brought me back to Singapore. I really appreciate that I was given the opportunity. Nothing would have happened if they hadn't. But I was young, and when Tanjong Pagar came calling, I didn't think twice. So looking back, maybe I wouldn't have moved so soon. But I did learn a lot at Tanjong Pagar with the players, especially there. Some really good players, and yeah, it was a good period there.
Who do you say you learned most from in your early years as a professional footballer?
I think I learned probably from the players who taught me to be professional, who
Okay.
who influenced me in that kind of way. Things on the pitch, yes, I learned, but it was more with the professionalism and then being a little bit, sorry, more serious. And that was, I remember Jamal Ashuri, who played for a couple of seasons here. He now has a son who's playing for Tunisia, I think. I forget his name, but I mean, obviously that rubbed off on his son as well, because he was very influential on me, and he was always there to talk, and you appreciate players like that. So when you get older, you hope that you can pass that back to some of the younger boys as well, because you don't realize how much value you can give them with things which you just learned along the way. Yeah.
And I think in total you had 2 spells at Tanjong Pagar.
Well, it was just that one spell when I went back. It was Tiong Bahru, then after Balestier, Tanjong Pagar.
And
I didn't go
one
back
at the
there.
end of your career as well, right?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a long time after. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What's the difference between the 2 spells then, in terms of the club? Like how you found the club at the starting
Oh,
of your career? It's probably like it's kind of bookended your career in a way.
I mean, I didn't relate them at all, because totally different personnel, different stadium, different me. Uh, it was Tanjong Pagar by name, but just a completely different club.
Okay.
There was only Richard Woon, who's the mainstay of Tanjong Pagar for the last 30 years. I mean, he's not there now, but he's been the mainstay and the heartbeat of Tanjong Pagar for so many years, and he was still there. So it was nice to see an old face still there.
All right. Now you went to SAFFC. So this is a very successful period in your career when you joined them. How did that move come about?
It was after I was in England. I played for Wrexham. I left Tanjong Pagar for Wrexham. Well, I didn't. It wasn't specifically for Wrexham. I went for trials. I ended up at Wrexham, and then I went back to. It was during the mid-season break in England. Or end of season break in England. I played for a couple of months with SAF.
Okay.
And so when I eventually finished at Wrexham, I had that affinity with SAF. Obviously, I think when I came back, I wanted to play for Tanjong Pagar again, but they weren't in the same position to sign me at that
All
point.
right.
So I chose SAF just on the recommendation of a few people, and it was a well-run club at that time. SAF and Home United were the best-run clubs, I think, and they were financially stable. So, and Fandi was the manager, so that was really nice being under Fandi for a little bit there.
And how was it working with Fandi as a coach? You faced him as an opponent, now as a coach.
Yeah, not many times as an opponent, but yeah, it was really nice to get to know him and work under him. He had his own style, and the boys really responded to him. And you can see by the results in those years that he was really successful, and the boys really enjoyed it there. I was young, I was just enjoying the football really at that point. I was not married, and no sort of outside pressures, and so it was just it was a good time. I was enjoying playing football. Yes.
So just to tell the viewers and listeners of what you have won at SAFFC, you won 6 S-League titles, 3 Singapore Cups, and
No,
2,
five Singapore Cups.
5
Oh,
at
four,
SAF.
four with SAF, I think. I
Is
think it's
okay. According to what I've seen here, is 3 at SAF and 1 in Tampines Rovers. That's later, and 3 community shields with SAF. So this is just about your stint at SAF. Which one of these honors that you've won is most special for you?
I mean, it was the league titles, but it was some of those league titles in 2000. Was it 2007 or 2008? where they really went to the wire. And I think 2007 was my first, so that was really special. But to be honest, yeah, that was good. But the one we won in 2014 was probably the best one for me. Because,
the best one for you.
Yes, with SAF. It was actually Warriors by then.
Yeah.
It was the best, simply because, well, I was the captain by that time, but not because of that. It was that prior to the season, nobody gave us a hope. I think people had predicted in the papers, I don't know, we were going to come 10th out of 11 teams or however many, we were going to be near the bottom.
Okay.
And we hadn't done well for years. Since sort of Richard Bock had left, we hadn't done well. And then we won it. And we came from sort of 4th or 5th position in the last couple of games to top the table. So that was an incredible feeling, yeah. So that was probably the best one for me. But, I mean, you win a league, they're all good, right? It's like scoring a goal. Yeah.
2007, you mentioned you won it by a point ahead of Home United.
Yeah, I that's probably it, yeah. And even 2008, it was very close as well.
Yeah, against Super 8s that time. 2 points clear of Super 8s.
Yeah, we had to beat Super Reds in the last few games, and we did that at Yishun, I remember. They were quite arrogant, actually, Super Reds. So it was a lot of sort of aggro on the field, I remember. And no, it was a good feeling to beat them and then to pit them for the league, yeah.
All right. What was special about SAFFC/Warriors that, made them win so much?
Do you know what? When you are at clubs, even if you're with a good group of players, sometimes that good group of players can win something. And the thing about Warriors, the SAF teams, were we went into seasons at the beginning expecting to win. We expected ourselves to win the league. And then you're playing for a club with a reputation who can win the league. And so it's easier in a way like that. When you play for a club where nobody expects you to win, it becomes a mindset within the players at the club, and it becomes very difficult to actually win. And so that's why they say you win the first one, you can win them again. But winning that first one is always the hardest. So at SAF, we had that positive mindset that we were going to win it. And if we didn't win it, we were devastated. So that was what was special sort of in the 2014 when nobody really expected it. You couldn't have said that the players expected it, and then we did it. And you see that throughout the world. I mean, there are teams now in the league who probably should have won it at some point, but they haven't won it. And if they do win it, then their mindset may change, and then they win more.
So you had three different spells there, right?
At SAF?
Yeah.
Well, I played that small period when it was the off season in England, and then I came back. I played with them from 2003 to 4, I think, and then I went to Woodlands. They had an exciting project. I was a little bit frustrated at SAF when I came back.
Was it due to playing time? You didn't get enough playing time, or what was the cause of frustration?
I was playing every game, but we weren't doing as well, and it was just a little bit frustrating. And it's one of those decisions. Maybe I wouldn't have made it again now, like I did then. But they had a good project. They had Semcorp Power and Gas came in at Woodlands. They brought some good players in. They had a coach who spoke to me, and Matt Brown, and he didn't last long, but he spoke to me, and I liked what he said, and so I joined. You don't think much. I didn't think about stability, or I didn't think how long it would go for at Woodlands, but I just liked the project there, and I jumped. And like I said, perhaps I wouldn't have done it again, and I'm sure Colonel Koch and Richard Bock at SAF weren't very happy with me, but that's why I appreciate when they did take me back a couple of years later. So like you said, I did have a couple of different stints at SAF. I went back to SAF after Woodlands, yes.
And then when you joined them as Warriors, that was a completely different team now, right?
Well, they were still SAF when I went back. It was only a few years later. They in 2009 or 10, after Richard Bock had left, I think. Then it became Warriors.
Okay.
And then the club changed. Then actually, so that was when Colonel Koch left, and that's when the club changed. Yeah, we had different management come in, and it was run differently. Let's leave it at that.
Okay, not very complimentary then. Doesn't sound like.
Oh no, I didn't say. It's different. So we still won things, but it was a different. It was run differently. Yeah.
All right, different style of management then. Yeah, so at SAF, you've won all that. Woodlands, Wellington, yeah, you spoke about them. That must have been a colorful period of your career playing for them. They're known to be a team that's got boisterous support.
I enjoyed it, 100%. I enjoyed it. To be honest, I may have stayed there longer, but things started to change quickly there at Woodlands, and so I decided that it was probably best going back to SAF. But I enjoyed it there. It was really exciting team. We should have won something, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I remember the final in 2005, the cup final, and we stayed in a hotel the night before, and I had food poisoning.
Oh dear.
And we battered Home United. They won't like me saying, but we battered them. First half, we battered them. Mm-hmm. We should have been a couple goals up. And then I couldn't start that second half. I was sick at half time, and I couldn't continue. That was the only cup final I've ever lost.
Oh, dear.
I've ever lost when I came off a half time. I've never lost another cup final. I don't think so. All the Suzuki Cups we've won, Singapore Cups I've won. So I think this is the only cup final I've actually lost. And so when I see people posting it on Facebook and talking about that, for some reason that cup final comes up from people, I get very frustrated seeing it, because we should have won it. And that Woodlands team was a really solid team.
Mm. You had also a spell at Geylang International.
Yes.
How did that one come about, and how was your experience there?
Again, this was towards I thought it was towards the end of my career. Obviously, I had a bit of a kickstart after that, but with the management changing at Warriors, I said it wasn't quite the same. So
yeah.
And then a new guy came in to run the club, and it didn't work. Let's just say that it didn't work. So I thought I was going to stay, and then it didn't happen. And then at that point, with the Lions 12 coming back into our league, it actually made it very, very difficult to find a club, because the focus was on the boys from Lions 12 reintegrating into our S League. And then I spoke to ID Iskander, and he helped me with the contract at Geylang. And then from not really having a club until late in the day before the season started, I was back in the national team by the end of the year. So
that's fantastic.
It's funny how things very quickly change, and perceptions kind of change of players very quickly. So the Geylang was sort of it was really fresh for me. I mean, I've been at Warriors so long at that point, and it was probably a good thing, even though I've always been loyal. So I wanted to stay at Warriors. Warriors was my club, and no matter what had happened, I wanted to see the club do well, and I thought we could change things. But as a player, it was just not possible to change the way the club was going. So to go to Geylang, and with some really good young players, I mean, if you look at the list of players who were there, Shafiq Ghani, Shawal, Gabriel Kwek, there's a lot of Shahil. There's a lot of really top players at the club, just sort of making a name, and they come from the Lions 12, and it was a exciting team. For that reason, we probably didn't do as well as we would have done a couple of years later with that team. I can imagine we could have won the league, but they were probably a little bit young. But it was a complete change to what I was was with at Warriors, and so that was really refreshing. I enjoyed that period with Hazrin, Jailani, and Noah Ali there.
Okay. Hazrin was your teammate at Tanjong Pagar, I believe. Is that right?
No, Hazrin. I played with him at Woodlands,
Woodlands.
but I
Okay.
knew him from the Milo football scheme as well.
Okay.
So it
All
went
right.
back that far.
Oh, that's yeah.
And of course, I played with him in the national team 2004 when we won that first Suzuki Cup.
Hmm.
So, and I played with Noah Ali at Warriors, where Noah Ali, he'll know he gave me a hard time there. But we won the league many times, so it was all worth it.
Okay. And you moved to Geylang's neighbors, Tampines Rovers. So this one, how did this move come about?
Um, it was end of the year. Sort of Geylang didn't have the funds. Actually, they for whatever reason they had different players on different length contracts, and those older players didn't have as long contracts, and we were not in the same position as the younger boys. So Sundram had contacts with Tampines. Sundram still wanted me in the national team. And so, honestly, at that point, Sundram really helped me. And I was able to join Tampines because the way the league was going, and I always said my biggest accomplishment was not to play until 44 with my body. It was to play until 44 with the league, trying to get rid of all the players. That was a much bigger accomplishment because every year I felt like I was trying to be pushed out the door. Okay. And that was the policy from the FA at the time. I think they've realized maybe that didn't succeed. I'm pretty sure all those boys who were under 23 playing in the league during those years, well, if you did a study now and worked out where they ended up, I'm sure a lot of them when they were 24, they either ended up at very weaker clubs or on the bench or had to retire. So I don't think that was a successful policy. It's been removed now. It wasn't professional, I don't think. And a lot of players lost their jobs because of this, a lot of older players. And so I always say the biggest achievement for me was to last so long with these policies in place. So, yeah, I managed to creep in the back door of Tampines. And then things kind of took off again from there. And then, Desmond Ong came in, chairman, and Gavin was obviously a fantastic coach. And I had another period of really good football in that team, and that was a really good team. We won the Singapore Cup. We probably should have won a little bit more. Did okay in the AFC Cup, I think, and then there was COVID. We had a hard time in Uzbekistan in the Champions League, just with the number of games we played, and then yeah. So I had a good 5 years at Tampines after that, which I think I was probably even surprised at. But at that point, to be honest, I felt like I could have played until I was 60. I was feeling so good, so I was enjoying that there.
On that Singapore Cup as well, what a mad game it was. A roller coaster 4-3 win for Tampines over your former club, Warriors.
Yeah, to be honest, I only lasted a part of that final. What had happened that year is they wanted to finish the cup very quickly at the end of the season, and so we had back-to-back games all the way through until the final. And I played every game. We'd hardly conceded a goal. The team was we were really solid at that point. You sometimes play for teams and you realize you're not going to concede goals. You have that confidence that just nobody's going to score. And we'd beaten Geylang, who was always a hard team to play against. We'd beaten them in the semi-final. And that was 2 legs. We'd beaten another team over 2 legs. And I got to the final and I'd had small injuries and I wasn't actually probably ready to play in the final. And I started and I had to come off after probably 20 minutes. And so thankfully the boys pulled it through, and Yeah, I think they scored 2 early goals. And then I think,
They scored first, and then you equalized, and then they took the lead again.
yeah. But to be honest, I think we dominated the game. At that point, Tampines were a much stronger team than Warriors. I think they had a lot of problems, Warriors, at that point. And they did really well in the final. But I have to say that we at that point were a much stronger team.
The better team.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now I'll bring you back to a rather infamous incident involving you and Noah Alam Shah. When he came on the show, I've spoken to him about it.
All right.
About this incident.
Yeah.
So now your version of what happened there. Just tell us about what happened there.
Well, I mean, it's on the video, right? So you you can see what happened. What I didn't like was at the time the FA had suggested I perhaps said something to him during the game, which was completely untrue. Nothing was said. I think it was just part of the emotion.
You both tussled for the ball and then both fell on the floor. Yeah.
Well, I jumped for the header, and yeah, he jumped into me. So it was just part of the emotion of the cup final, and that game, more so than the game in 2019, where you say it was back and forth. That game really was back and forth, and I think probably Tampines felt they'd won it at some point, but we scored 2 late goals, and from 3-2 down, we won the game 4-3, and so it was emotional. There was a lot of tension between the two teams at that point, because I think we were fighting for the league, we were fighting for the cup. They had some very competitive players in there. Our team was very competitive. It was a different kind of football played then, and there was more rivalry, I think, within the teams. And so even when we went to the national team, there was that feeling of, Tampines, SAF, Home United. There was a little bit of we were all friends, but there was a little bit of sort of tension within the team, maybe because of the rivalry within the clubs. I don't think that happens now. For some reason, it's changed in many ways. But it was just tension on the field. So there's nothing really more to say about that. All I would say is there was nothing said during the game. It was just something near the end, and you get emotional. And on that day, it went over the top.
And he apologized to you. I believe he did mention that he did apologize to you after that.
He called me. I mean, I don't remember much of that because I don't even remember picking the trophy up, to be honest. I remember as far as going to shake hands with the players, and then I was just kind of just lost, really.
Okay.
So I had to go to the hospital, and I was fine. I don't really remember what happened, but I've seen photos of me in the celebrations, and I kind of look like a ghost at the back. So all done and dusted now. I mean, I played under Alam Shah. He took me back to Tanjong Pagar. He was fantastic with me. He gave me that last hurrah to play for Tanjong Pagar. I was really happy to join the club where I started, just to finish off. And all done and dusted. It's just part of the process, and we all grow in different ways from it, and we're good now. I mean, I can call it now. We're fine. We haven't talked about it, but it's, the boys often have a laugh with me about it. So there's often sort of gestures in the dressing rooms with knees going into heads and things with a laugh, but it's all done. Yeah.
All right. All good then.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking about Alam Shah. Let's talk about who are some of the toughest strikers you have faced in your career in the S League.
In the S League.
Yeah.
Do you know, as a partnership, it was always Egmar and Indra, because they had that understanding between them. And one was quick, one would go behind, cause problems. The other one was receiving. He was so strong, Egmar. He'd hold the ball up. you couldn't even see the ball.
Mm.
Very clever strike partnership, and I had many torrid days at Bishan, especially. I never liked going to Bishan to play against them. They were really good together. And then obviously there was Alam Shah, and then when Mirko went there as well, and they were solid there as well at Tampines. Yeah, I mean there have been other strikers. Kegney Ludovic was a difficult one because he had such a low center of gravity, and he'd back into you, and you give fouls away, and then he'd turn. He'd use his body really well. There's been so many good strikers in the S League, so it's hard to say, but I remember Egmar and Indra. I remember, Alam Shah, Mirko, exceptional. But there've been a lot of top strikers.
Anyone you enjoyed having a personal duel with on the pitch?
With Egmar?
With any of the strikers, like on a one-on-one duel?
I enjoyed the ones I got the better of more often than not.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, some of them I really enjoyed playing it because it was easier. But obviously, you challenge yourself with the harder ones. And then when it comes to international level, if you talk about the best ones there, then it's a different level, And then you get those players physically. I can't remember those names, but the boys who played for Iraq, they were good. I forget his name. I forget the boy who played for Iraq, the striker.
The captain, Yunus.
Yeah.
Yunus Muhammad, I think his name.
Yeah, who said he was like 21 when he looked like 30 already. He played in the Asian Games as an under-23 player. And then there was the guy who played behind him as well. And he was putting the balls through to him all the time. And he ran. I mean, that was why physically you always had to be much bigger to play international games. And there are players in Singapore who would have played many more games with their talent, and they played in the S League fine. But when it came to international level, you needed that physicality. And so some players couldn't play at that level simply because of the size. And football is, in the end, about your physical attributes. And you're born with that. Your speed, your size to many extents. And I always feel that I could have played to a higher level if I was sort of that little bit taller or a little bit quicker, and they're the cards you're dealt with, right? So you gotta work with what you have, and at an international level, you need to be physically strong. Okay,
and as a defender, who are some of the best defensive partners that you've had?
I always say I enjoy playing with Kenji Arai. He came in with Albrechts, and then he joined SAF before me, actually. And I came back to play with him after Woodlands. And, he was a left footer, I was right, more comfortable on my right. So I thought we worked really well. I could look at him and he'd understand what I wanted. I wouldn't have to shout. So it made things really easy. So when I wanted to push up, we knew when to push up, we knew when to drop off. And he was just a really solid player and a really nice guy. And on and off the field, we got along. And so for me, he was one of the best at the back for me, yes.
Okay. And which of the S League clubs that you played for that is closest to your heart?
Well, SAF is gone.
Yeah. But you can still say them.
And Tanjong Pagar is a very different club now. So I spent the longest time at SAF, and I won the most things. So if you went back through the years, and I'd probably say in the end it was SAF. It's although I enjoyed my time at so many clubs here, and each of them was special for their own reason. Different parts of my career. I appreciate all the clubs and the people who have been involved in those clubs, starting from Robert Lim and Sivaji and Hari Paijan. They were the pioneers of my career, my influence from the start. And then obviously playing for the national team with Radhi, and to see him back in Singapore recently was really great. I mean, everybody made an effort to see the guy. I think he probably enjoyed his time back and realized how much he was appreciated here. Because sometimes when you're here, you're working hard, people don't appreciate you until you're gone. And so it was really nice to see the reception he got for the things he's done in Singapore. And so that time with the national team was obviously highlight of my career, really a highlight. He gave us a hell of a time when he was here. And so we probably didn't appreciate him when he was here as much, but when all the dust settles and things are finished, you look back and you just got to say thank you to the man and appreciate what he did and the time he spent with players who were young at that time and probably doing things they wouldn't do now, and you realize the things he did and the pressure he was under was immense, and he coped with all of that. And so for him, he was outstanding for Singapore, and I'm glad that the people here really appreciate what he did.
Okay. And what would you say is the secret to your longevity in your career?
I think just naturally, I'm fairly fit. From a young age, I was a good runner. I was naturally athletic in many ways, and that's obviously it helped me a lot. Some players, they put on weight very easily.
Okay.
They have to work really hard, and when they get older, it becomes harder for them to sort of stay fit and stay physically able to play in the league. But I was naturally always fairly fit, and I could run. And then I think when I was about 30, I made a conscious decision at that age that I really had to be even more professional and do everything in training that the coaches were asking, to really work a little bit harder, to look after myself outside of football that little bit more.
So that would include your diet, exercises?
My diet, yeah. I mean, I had friends at that time where we'd enjoy going out at night, and that kind of stopped when I was around 30, and I wouldn't have lasted that long. But also I have to say that the Sasha from the national team, the fitness coach, he had a big influence on me as well. When he came in around 2003, 2004, before the Suzuki Cup, he really hit us hard, and I was a lot fitter for that, and my core strength was much better, and I think that sort of put me in good stead to see me through. But I mean, I was a defender as well. I wasn't a midfielder who had to turn. I wasn't involved in the thick of it, to say, all the time. So being able to see the game as a whole, being able to read the game from the back, me being the one kicking players, although I was never that player to kick players, but not having players kick me as much, then that obviously helped me in a way. Defenders last longer. And so, I've been really lucky with injuries as well. And that's how I've lasted longer.
On that note as well, when you were a player, was there any defenders that you watched that inspired you, or you took some tips from their game?
I suppose you watch every defender. I mean, you'd look to defenders in the Premier League in Europe, but I wouldn't say anybody in particular I would watch. There were players I liked for different reasons. I like Carvalho because of his aggression and his desire, but then players like Rio Ferdinand were elegant on the ball, and then you had players like John Terry, who I'd watch at that time, and he put his body on the line, and he was demanding of other players around him, and he controlled the game in different ways, and I think that came into my game more when I got older, is that I was more commanding. I was able to control the defense, and so part of my role was not all the time playing, but to lead the defense, and I think I'd become much more competent at that, and so I felt I could control games just by talking more, rather than having to do more. So in that way, I think I added value to my game, that especially if you had young players around you, they'd learn quickly when to push up as a team, when to keep compact, and just different things. just controlling players so that the team would be in better shape in different games, because you meet different obstacles in different games, and I think I learnt a lot and was able to improve my game in that way in a lot of ways, and I was valuable because of this.
All right. You spoke a bit about the naturalization process that you took. Got your PR and then citizenship. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so there was talk when I came back to Balestier straight away that they were looking for players to naturalize, and obviously I was a naturalized player, but I was very different in many ways. So I'd lived here since I was 2 years old. So
yeah.
I was Singaporean in many ways. It was a country very close to my heart. So I think when they started to discuss about naturalization, I think one of the things was, the criteria was, well, is this player willing to stick about? Is he someone who's willing to really put his heart and soul into the football in Singapore? And I think for me, being here from such a young age and then coming back here, I think they realized that I was a player who was willing to work hard for the country. And so when that talk came up, I was sort of 21. I was a good age for it. There was no criteria from FIFA that you had to be playing in the leagues for 5 years prior. So I think I was one of the first to be approached. Yeah. I was not in the end the first to take it. I think Egmar and Mirko were the first, because I was not sure at that point. I was not sure where I wanted to be. I was not sure if I could play in England because of the change of a passport. Obviously, I had to give up my British passport, so it was a big decision. So I think shortly after I made the decision, after Mirko and Egmar had taken it, that I would take it. And so when I was, I think it was when I was playing in England, I made that decision. I was 24 at that point, and I took the passport, yeah.
Okay. And what was the reception like of the local players towards the naturalized players?
To be honest, I didn't really think of it much. I was just happy to play, and
you didn't notice anything different, like, when you came to the national team, or when the naturalized players came to the national team, the local players were a bit, taken aback, or they were making some.
But I think honestly that was there. Now I look back, yeah, it was there. They probably didn't want us there so much, but I didn't really think of it at that time. I just thought I was more. I was different in many ways anyway to the locals, and I just thought I didn't maybe fit in. I did obviously have good friends in there. I got along very well with a lot of the team, but I'm sure there were players in there who were not happy. And then when I was in the first 11, probably not happy as well. I mean, I will always say that Suzuki Cup it was a Tiger Cup in 2002, and I come back from England to play in that. And I hadn't played in preparation games. I always say it's probably a mistake that I started in that team. But on the morning of the game, they announced the team, and I think I was as shocked as many that I was actually starting. I played, and obviously we had some bad results, but I think they'd been away on a pre-tournament trip to Middle East, and I hadn't taken part in that. So it wasn't perfect preparation, and I think from a coach's point of view, I think maybe it wasn't the right decision to put me straight in the team. And so if you're saying, did the locals not take me in, I think they were happy to take me in, but I'm sure there was a little bit of ill feeling when I was put in that first 11. But then that's wasn't a fault of my own. And once I was selected, obviously I was very proud to play. When I first heard that national anthem, obviously a lot of emotions, because it was my country. It was where I'd lived since I was a sort of a baby, and to play for the country, and having been to the stadium and watched games as a youngster, then to play there with the national jersey on, with the anthem, it was incredible. Yeah.
Did many of your national team teammates know that you have actually been in the country for that long?
I don't know if people really listen. They just people don't really think about your past, especially when you're young. They just see you as a different face, really. So to me, I was local, but to a lot of people, and for many years, I don't think people saw me as a local. It's always been something that's there. Obviously, I don't look very local, so it is how it is. And although I always felt like this was my country, I don't have much affiliation with England. I have some family there, but Singapore has always been my home.
Even on that note as well, do you think the media did help much to, put this out that, you've actually been here for a long time, from basically from your childhood, you've been in Singapore. So you've been born and not born, but at least brought up in Singapore, and the public should be aware of this. Do you think the media did much in that sense?
I'm sure it was mentioned at different times throughout my career, but I don't think many people realize that. But I don't blame anybody. I mean, we didn't have the same social media as we do now. So when they've talked about this boy who's playing for Cardiff now, he's come back. There's also social media about him, his grandma having a hawker center and things. So I mean, people probably accept him more than perhaps they accepted me back in the early 2000s. But that's the way it is. I never thought anything of that. But you're right. Probably not many people realize how long I'd actually been in Singapore.
Yeah, that's something that has, I never knew it until only very recently, that you've actually been here for that long. And you're not one of those that, have been here. You're here only for the football. You came here for football, and then because of that, one of the better players in the league, and you were naturalized.
No, if I hadn't been a footballer here, I would have done probably my best to be here anyway. That's the truth. What job that would have been, I often ask myself. But I certainly couldn't have been unemployed here because I wasn't a Singaporean. But football really gave me everything here, and I appreciate that. And it's the place I call home, and it's the place I will probably always live. My kids are Singaporean. My wife is Singaporean now. She was originally from China. She's Singaporean now. Okay. And so this is our home.
Right, nice. You won 3 AFF Cups. Which one of those 3 is the most special?
It's probably the first one, where nobody really. Well, to be honest, I think the first and the last, nobody expected us to win. But probably the first one was the most special. Yeah, because Singapore hadn't done it for a while, and it was we won it at the old National Stadium. We lifted it there. That was the only time we lifted it there. The other times we lifted it in Thailand. So I think that was the most special, when we beaten Indonesia away. I scored those goals in the semi-final and final. I just got married, actually, so it was a good time. I got married just before the first leg of the semi-final, the final in Indonesia. And Radhi said to me, he said, "You don't look focused." I remember, he said, "You're not focused then." And I scored in the first 5 minutes. So not being focused was a good thing, I think. And then we beat Indonesia in the second leg in Singapore, and lifting the trophy in front of the fans in Singapore was probably the best one.
So that's the sweetest feeling. You spoke also earlier about the players coming into the national team in different factions, Tampines, Warriors, SAF, and Home United. So was it like this? I mean, we've heard a lot in podcasts and reports from players that played in England's golden generation, and they had the United camp, the Liverpool camp, Chelsea camp. Was it something similar that you can relate to?
I don't know how it was there, to be honest, but I just say that I put it more from the comparison now. When I played in the national team in 2017, when I ended, it was a very different kind of feeling than it was when I played earlier on. But I just feel like there was a lot more competitiveness at that time. There was a lot more aggression on the field. The game was very different as well. Maybe the way the game has changed, and there's not as much aggression, there's not as much physical battles on the field, because it's all nice passing and movement. And no, the game's changed now. That rivalry is not as intense. I mean, I would say even in the English national team, I don't think when they go for national duty that feeling is the same as it was in those days when it was sort of those Chelsea players, John Terry, Frank Lampard, and then the United players, Rio Ferdinand and the Nevilles and Beckham, and then those Liverpool players coming in. I think there was tension, and it seemed to be a similar trait that's happened in Singapore. I'd say there was not a lot of tension in the national team. There wasn't, but there was always something where if we played a couple of days earlier against Tampines and we went in the national team, of course you're still feeling it. Of course. And so it takes a couple of days for that to kind of wear off and think, okay, they're my teammates now. The good thing is we had Reddy, and Reddy, he wouldn't have accepted any of that. He was the boss, and he controlled things, yeah.
So he's the glue that binds the team.
100%. The Reddy was you didn't mess with Reddy, and it was good for all of us. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, talk about working under Radi as well. What was his coaching methods like? You know, I believe from what you're telling me, he's a disciplinarian.
Yeah, in many ways he was, but then he'd always be one who'd come and put his arm around you and talk to you, and so he had really good personal relationships with so many players. I mean, obviously players are humans; they have problems as well, whether it be on the field or at home or with their clubs. He knew, and he was able to look after players like that, and so players did everything they could for him. He would always have that human side to him, and you could go to him and talk to him. So yeah, business was business, but he'd be willing to help people, and he tried to help people I know that maybe shouldn't have been helped, and sometimes at that point he was very quick to say, okay, thank you, bye. And you probably see throughout his time with the national team, certain players had to leave, and other players stayed longer. So you had to work hard for him, with him, but he always had that soft touch, and I think you've heard people talk about that before, that he was more than just a coach.
Okay. And when in this period where Singapore was successful in the AFF Cup, do you feel that maybe Singapore should have taken another step forward in the continent? I would say in the Asian continent.
We were so close in I forget what year though. We were so close in 2010, I think it was. And I think that was one thing that it was Reddy's biggest regret, that we didn't qualify for the Asian Cup. When we had a team, we were in a really hard group actually. We were with Iraq. Was it Iraq or Iran? We were with Thailand and we were with Jordan, and we came within minutes of basically qualifying out of that group for the Asian Cup. And that was the biggest regret. And for me also, I mean, it was it would have been amazing if we'd done that, because Singapore obviously never qualified, and we should have done it. We should have done it, and that would have really set us apart from different teams in the past. But we didn't, and so that's the difference. It's just small things in football which make big differences.
We'll talk about your time in S-League. You were there near the start of the league, all the way till what it is right now. What would you say is the difference in the league, the quality, especially in terms of quality? I would feel quality, the intensity of the play.
I think it's the organization of the league, honestly. There's a lot of things which decisions along the way which haven't been great, and you know, when you lose fans, it's hard to get them back because the fans were there at one point, and they would have stayed, but just different decisions along the way has devalued the league in certain ways, and it's very hard. It's like you have trust in somebody, you lose the trust of that person. It's hard to get the trust back, and it's a lot of work to get that back. So had they built on, you know, the 2004, 7, and 12 successes in the Suzuki Cup, had they built on those and used it to generate more interest in the football and within our league here, I think that would have been the biggest thing, but that didn't happen. We don't need to go into it. I think there's a lot being talked about along the way in the league, and I think if people are honest, they look back and there's decisions which were poor. It doesn't mean things can't get better. They can, but there needs to be some good decisions, and there need to be decisions, because at the moment there aren't enough decisions being made or being acted upon, and the league is sort of there, but we need to move things forward. Basically, there's so many things that can be done, and if we don't start to do them soon, then we can talk as much as we like, but there are good decisions that can be made, and then it's easy to say what you want, but then the action is
actions. Yeah, correct. And that reflects on the national team as well, how the league is going. Do you believe in that?
Of course. Often you have a good league, it translates into a good national team. But with this new coach coming in, and with Gavin obviously playing a pivotal role there, I think they've looked better. They've looked better than they have done for years, and so that is something to celebrate in some way. But obviously, we're still, and it was obvious in those games, we're still quite a long way off Thailand, Vietnam, and probably Malaysia when they get their full team on the field. So a lot of things, and yes, you're right. The quality of a league and the competition the boys have every week, and the fans who are coming, and you know, everything transcends to the national team. And you know, you want the best players playing in your own league. If possible, can you get Safwan to come back? If possible, can you get other players who are playing abroad? Can you get them to come back? Because people want to see them. People will come if they know that's the best league. People will come. And can we make the best league we can? That's the question. At the moment, I don't think we are.
And on the point of naturalization, our neighbors in Singapore have all got on this act now. They're naturalizing players. A lot of teams have got mixed heritage players as well coming on board. Where do you stand on this point? Because now, at one point, Singapore were the trendsetters. They naturalized players, and right now it looks like Singapore is being left behind in that aspect.
So I've heard people say that in some ways we were led into a false dawn by taking naturalized players and doing well, and kind of neglecting the development of local players. But that's not a reason why we don't go and take those best players who have some form of heritage in Singapore, because Singapore is a really multicultural country. There must be a lot more players out there who are quality. They may not be playing for Cardiff. They may not be playing for those top teams in Europe. But there's still really good players out there that we could probably find. Are we doing the best to find those players? I don't know. There's no reason why those players can't be involved, and we still focus a lot of attention on the development of local players here. I think that will create a better league, a bigger pool of players, obviously. And one of the biggest things is you need more clubs. If you have 6 foreigners in a team, you have 9, I don't know, is it 9 local clubs? You have Brunei, you have... Then how many players are actually playing? What is the pool of players you have to choose from the national team? You need to have a bigger pool of players. So bringing in quality players, naturalized players, I don't know where the F8 stand on this, or the government stand on this at the moment, but if there are players who are available, they've been for 5 years playing in the league, and their quality, they want to commit, then I don't see why not. That can be a route if they're going to improve the football here, the football in Singapore, and they have a commitment to the nation, and they have their heart in the right place. I think that's the criteria, and I don't see why not. But definitely development of Singapore boys, and to be honest, I've seen working with the youth in Singapore. I believe there's a good crop coming up. Lion City are doing hell of a job there, I have to say, hell of a job. They have probably the best players in Singapore, but I go there very often and I watch how they work with the players, the coaches who they have working with them, the mentality they're instilling in the boys is top. And the investment they're putting in to take the boys away on trips, to have individual trips for them as well as team trips, it's second to none. They're the top, and we can only learn from and appreciate what they're doing. My son is there; he's part of that, and to be honest, he's in the best place now. Mm. And hopefully there'll be more sort of football clubs who can put that investment into the development of the youth. Obviously, the national development centres are now trying to do that as well. But LCS, they're top.
Mm. You yourself are coach right now, right?
Yes, with ex-SG.
Yeah. How's that coming along?
I enjoy it. It was something I was doing while I was playing the last few years of my career. It was hard playing and then coaching at the same time, and I think that was part of the reason I did stop in the end. But I enjoy the coaching. I enjoy the management side of the game as well, where I'm looking after the centre, which I run, the teams that play in the Singapore Youth League, which has been really successful. The league, I think that's a really good addition to Singapore football, and that can only grow. It's gone through teething issues in the first year, but I think it's going really well. And I enjoy that side, and I've seen a lot of good players, and it's exciting. But the main thing is that they see a pathway. So you can't only develop the youth, you have to develop at the top as well, because they need to know that there's something there for them, something worth striving for, and that has to be in the Premier League. So that needs to be improved. So there's more opportunities for players. There's more money there. There's more facilities available, because facilities are a huge issue at the moment in Singapore. I have a big problem finding fields, even in the position I am at SG, we have problems. So a lot of things can be improved, and this is through the coordination of different groups, collaborating and organizing better ways, and there's a lot of really good things which can happen, and I think there's been a good start in many ways, but a lot of things need to be done still.
Okay, Daniel, your time at Wrexham, how did that come about?
I'd done well in the league in 2001, and then there was always the ambition, could I play in Europe? And I've spoken to some of the boys at Tanjong Pagar, and they said you should try to go back and play in Europe, and then I kind of made an initiation. I sent some videotapes back to clubs there, and there was a positive feedback. I was given opportunities for trials, so I didn't sign a new contract with Tanjong Pagar going into the 2000 and I can't remember. It was a 2002 season. I decided to go for trials over in England. Initially, I went to Swindon. It was the first club I went to. I had a good contact there. Roy Evans was the coach there at the time. Okay. And they wanted to sign me. And in fact, Roy Evans, he resigned shortly afterwards because he didn't have funds for new players. I don't think he was happy at the club because of the lack of funds. And it was from there that they put me in contact with Wrexham. I did go to a few other clubs. It was probably the wrong time of the year because they had their squad set up, and I was coming in mid-season for them. It was in December. But but they put me in contact with Wrexham and Dennis Smith. There was somebody who knew Dennis Smith, and so I went up there, and within a session they'd signed me because of the recommendation I'd had from Swindon. They were not in a good position. They were near the bottom of Division 1 at the time. So I played my first game for Wrexham against Port Vale away, and there were reports in the paper next day because we beat them that the chopstick kid had helped them win, and so that was a really nice start, you know. But then we ended up getting relegated that season to Division 2. But by then it was not the league I wanted to play in, actually, Division 2. But by then I become affiliated with the club. I enjoyed being there in the town, lived in the town there. The boys at the club were amazing. I had a fantastic time with them, really top guys. The banter in the dressing room was so much different to Singapore. I enjoyed that as well. I found it very hard to sort of keep pace with them at start with all the banter, because I was just not used to the culture there, because I was basically a Singapore mindset. And so I signed again. We played in Division 2. We were promoted. We won the Welsh Cup. Yeah. And at the end of that year, I come back to play in Singapore in the Suzuki Cup. And, you know, there was the option of living in Wrexham, or coming back to Singapore and traveling with the national team around Asia and being with the national team, basically. And that was the big pull. Not say club football. I enjoyed playing for the clubs, but it was the national team that I really wanted to be part of. I knew being in Singapore was going to make that a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to come back. And that decision, you know, you have to make decisions in life. Had I chosen to play in England, my life would have been completely different. I met my wife when I came back at that point to Singapore, and so that was a route I chose. I wouldn't say I regret, but it would have been different. It would have been interesting to see how my career would have developed had I stayed in England, because I think I could have played in the Championship, probably not the Premier League, but I'm pretty sure. A lot of my teammates at that time, when we got promoted, they went to Championship clubs. Okay. They moved to Championship clubs, and I think I could have done. Maybe not that season, maybe the year later. I had calls from other clubs to go to clubs in the first division there, but I decided to come back to Singapore. And like I say, I don't regret it. I had an amazing time playing club football as well, but most importantly, it was the national team I wanted to play for.
You have friends in Wrexham today?
Yes, when I go back, I still see them, yeah.
And it's a world apart from the Wrexham that you know, because now Wrexham's on OTT, they're on Disney Plus. We can see the documentary.
Yeah, I didn't
they're
think
owned
about
by
that.
Hollywood producers, Hollywood actors. And they're making good strides as well.
Shortly after I left, a year or so after I left, they were relegated to the second division, and then they went down to non-league. And so me saying I played for Wrexham a couple of years ago, people would have thought, you played in non-league. But now it's kind of, it's quite nice to say I played for Wrexham. They're obviously well known around, especially in the States with their owners. But you can watch shows about them. And from a small town perspective, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like there in the town, because they're so passionate about the football, and they had it so hard for so many years. So it's really nice. It's a fairy tale story for them, and they're living the dream, really. And I have friends who are connected with the club still. They do work in some capacity with the club, and it's amazing. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I know, Daniel, you got to go.
Yeah.
Very soon. Thanks a lot for taking your time to come and speak to us. Appreciate it a lot.
Enjoyed it, right?
Just before you go, who do you want us to interview next?
That's my choice.
Yes.
Well, why don't you interview somebody? Did you interview Shah? He won't want to go on. I'm sorry. He's a very private person. He keeps low profile. but he's doing good things in the coaching scene with Singapore Football Club. It's a club which I'm also involved with in some capacity. Really, a club which you probably will hear a lot more of in the near future, Singapore Football Club. And there's a really good group of coaches there with
of former national players as well.
yes,
I know
Karel Amri there as well. But Charles Ishak's doing good things with the coaching. Indra Shadan also at Balestier.
Balestier, yeah.
So one of those two. They're two fairly quiet
I've
guys.
done Indra already. Indra's done.
Speak
So
to
probably
Cheryl.
Sharil then.
He maybe not happy that I've mentioned him because he's pretty quiet, down to earth, just working hard, and so it'd be good if he has a little bit of limelight and let you know what he's doing now for a really good club.
Okay, sure.
Okay,
We'll approach him.
Thanks,
Thank you
Russ.
very much, Daniel. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
It's me, Russ, signing out.